Greetings, dear ones. I'm Cryon of Magnetic Service. We still find ourselves in what my partner calls the homeroom energy. Let me give it another name: family. And family will hear these things first and others later. It's important for when I speak to family, it's different. Oh, you've heard that from the perspective of the other side of the veil, all humanity is family. But I know who's here. I know who's been here over and over. I know the ones who recognized my voice, not my partner's. And over 20 years ago, felt the energy that something was changing. This is going to be called the state of the energy right now. We can't cover every subject. We're going to cover the ones that you're thinking about. Family in the room. But before we could ever do that, we have to set the stage. Setting the stage in perhaps a way that you don't want to hear. There's so many of you who are concerned about so much. Less than a human lifetime ago, I want to take you back to 1938. Less than one human lifetime. Depending upon your age, some of your parents were living. Perhaps you were. If you had a snapshot of that moment in time, every single country in Europe and Asia had their own king, emperor, their own dictator, their own ways. And every one of them was vying for position of who to ally with for what was coming. A renewal of the war. And as they vied for position, it was a conquering position. How can we ally so we can conquer these and get the resources of these? There was only a smattering of democracy at that time where anyone had any say at all about what our country would do. And the people were frightened, more than frightened. If you had any idea what was coming, they would really be frightened. That was the human nature back then. And that human nature also reflects 100 years before that, and 100 years before that, and 100 years before that. War solves nothing, and you kept doing it. A dysfunction that solved no problems, and yet you kept at it. This is the dysfunction of human nature. In an old energy that never crept forward, that never got better, that never evolved at all. Less than one human lifetime, that was the energy of the planet about ready to launch into one of the worst things that has ever happened to this planet. Unconscionable things. Millions would die horribly at the whims of a few. So before you start complaining too much about what's wrong with this world, I want to tell you, dear ones, human nature has already moved off this peg. less than one human lifetime. There are still atrocities on this planet, but they are literally in pockets. Today, if you could take a poll of humanity, and that is not that difficult today, what you want is peace. You have more control of this than you've ever had before, and the problems you see are of that old energy that still shows itself in the pockets, in the leaders, in the organizations. And you're so concerned about it, and you should be, but dear ones, go back to 3738, just a moment, for just a moment, to see where you've come from. I want the perspective to be there. We've said this before, you don't live long enough to remember. If you had the lifespan that is coming, if you had the lifespan that is even double yours, which is coming, you would have been there. You would have remembered if you survived. And my words would not fall flat on those who don't remember and have no idea what that felt like, or the fear for your family and everything else you owned and were in your own life itself. This planet's energy today is vastly different from then. And you have so many more human beings. The standard logic model would say that the more humanity is here, the worse it gets. But you've had a reversal of that. Instead, the more humanity, by the billions, starts to look at things differently. Are there problems today? Of course. Are they big? Yes, but nothing like then. Nothing like then. So let us talk about this energy. We're going to start by giving you a statement, and then we're going to review. Statement. Predictions are not possible. You will hear them from many, but they're only good for the moment, because humanity is in charge via free will of what happens on the planet. No entity from anywhere can tell you what's going to happen tomorrow or the next day with absolute certainty. Instead, what you have are potentials. And the potentials that we see, that energy of creative source from the other side of the veil, which is part of you, sees the whole and sees things you don't see. And the form of potentials, what might take place because of the things that are forming now, the things that are not reported, the things you don't know about yet. It's on record, validated, that I told you you would lose a pope 13 months before you lost a pope. It wasn't a prediction, dear ones. It was a channel given in Dallas, giving you the potential because we saw it, because of what the Pope was thinking and doing, what he was preparing, the trouble he was in his own mind. The man who wanted to be Pope and never thought he'd make it arrived at that scene, and he was never prepared for what he saw. The Holy See is supposed to be one who deals with the spirituality of the planet instead of payoffs for child abusers. It hurt his heart. It wounded his psyche. His Pope manual did not have that in it, and he resigned. Now that's called a wild card. And I want to talk about what wild cards are. They're generalities. They can be human beings. They can be events. They can be a change of perception. They can be human nature on the edge of reforming. The master astrology that was given from the master astrologer was given today. A snapshot for what 2018 might bring solely from knowledge of the readings of the energy of the planets in their positions in 2018. Astrology is science undiscovered. For so many rolling their eyes, the esoterics of it would never enter. That would be perhaps the physics building. Yet, we've told you before, just in a synopsis and a summary that is so short, do you realize that the pulling of the planets on the sun is gravity, and it changes the patterning of the stress of the sun? What planets are together, how they're being pushed and pulled. The sun takes that which is the energy of the planets around it. That's physics, that's gravity, that's Kepler. And the patterning of the sun literally is contained and broadcast through its magnetic field, called the heliosphere. That magnetic field is all around the planet. Your magnetic field intercepts the sun's magnetic field. When one magnetic field overlaps another, it's called inductance, and there's a transfer of information, a clean transfer. And suddenly your magnetic field contains literally the patterning of the planets as they pushed and pulled around the sun. Cryon Book 1, you were affected by the magnetic field. I am the magnetic master. I am here to move the magnetics of this planet in order to make human nature something you have never seen yet. Because physics, magnetism, consciousness is all related. And that is why astrology works. Not near as esoteric as you wanted. And what the master astrologer told you is exactly what this channel will echo. A time for reformation. More than you're seeing now, dear ones. Let me back up. 1 year ago, I gave you information because you needed it. A wild card had arrived, and the election that you had was just complete. And the shock was this: you didn't expect it. Now I have a plea for all of you listening and the ones here. This subject will generate feelings based upon the leaning that you would have politically. And so I'm going to ask you to do the unthinkable, to throw away the leanings. For just a moment, I want you to think metaphysically and not politically. I want you to think for the planet, not for you, not for your country. I want you to pretend you've arrived from space and you're studying what happened here. You're not invested in it. You have no feelings of one way or the other. I know it's a big thing to ask. I told you a year ago that the election produced a wild card. You've had a year of the wild card. Do you believe me now? Wild cards are not always here in order to invent things or change things, like you had with Tesla, for instance, or Jobs, for instance. Sometimes they arrive in order to stir things up. And then we told you why. Dear ones, if the other candidate had won, nothing would have changed. It may have been the right one for you. Nothing would have changed. All of the systems and all the things that were systemically wrong with the systems would have continued. And some of these systems were so systemically burdened with corruption and things that didn't work and greed that they would have exploded. You cannot take that kind of dysfunctional thing and expect that you can smooth it over year after year before someday it explodes. The wild card came in order to destroy the systemic systems, and he's already doing it. And you may look at it and go, this is the worst thing or the best thing. I told you, don't think that way. I want you to think about what's going on. A big stick has been put right in the middle of everything, and it's been turned and turned. And for some of you, it's so uncomfortable. For some of you, it's so comfortable. But dear ones, you cannot ignore the stick. Indeed, there's nothing been like it. You haven't seen anything since you've been born that would pull apart that which is the systemic part of what works in government, in the stock market, in appointments, in the way things are supposed to work with lobbyists, with anything that you've held dear and clear to your heart, that is the basis of your country. I will tell you, dear ones, that after 200 years, sometimes things get stale. The job is being done. Now, there are no predictions, but there are potentials. 1 year ago, I told you the wild card would have several phases of wildness. You've seen one. There are more things coming. Now, don't be frightened, because they're different than what you've seen. Definition, wild card, completely and totally out of sync with what everyone expects. That's wild card. There may be one or two of those coming based upon the potentials. This is not a fearful message. It just is a report. And in that wildness, there is simply more systemic things being changed. When a system is broken and it comes back on itself and destroys itself, the only way to change it is not necessarily to destroy it, but to change its seeds, how it works. Systemic means at the very stem of the system, the very attribute that created the system, this is what's being done. Think for a moment of this. When you prune a tree, does it hurt your heart to see it all cut up the way it is? To some it does. The ones who don't understand gardening or the cycles of life or systems in general. And once where a tree stood that was magnificent with flowers and leaves and many, many branches, suddenly it's reduced with no flowers and no branches hardly at all and no leaves. Pruned is the word. But the tree still exists It's just that all of the systems that it had are gone. And the tree gets to regrow the branches, regrow the beauty of the leaves. And the reason for pruning is that the tree continues to survive instead of getting too full and falling over and dying. That the tree gets to recreate itself and is bigger than before. This is what is going on right now. A pruning that you needed. Dear ones, the wild cards exist so you don't have to go through the hardship of an exploding economy, or the hardship of government that no longer works, where nothing can get accomplished, period. I know it looks that way, dear ones, that's going to change. The pruner has arrived. I want you to think of this and be kind in your metaphysical assessment of what's going on for your country, what's going on for the planet because of what's going on in your country. And I want you to remember that things take time, and there's something else coming. Oh, by the way, and speaking of the Pope, there's something else coming. With free choice, there's something else coming. This is the way of things right now. Past the shift, dear ones. It's time to accelerate the things that are inappropriate. Accelerate them not into inappropriateness, but accelerate their demise, or their change, or their perception of change, so that this particular planet doesn't have to slog through the things that some of you continue to expect. And then that brings up the subject of many of the last channels. Why is it you project the future on the past? From the past you develop the future. And the answer to this is because all you've known is low energy. All you've known is low consciousness. That's all you've known. A world filled with darkness where these things happen because human nature is human nature. That's all you've known. And therefore, that's what you project. You do realize that. Do you look to the future and say, this or something better? Benevolence is coming, and I'm going to do my part with a consciousness of expectation of good things. Or do you take the route that's the easiest? It never worked out, it'll never work out, you're always going to hell in a handbasket. Sorry, I didn't mean to use the word handbasket. That's a joke from my partner. You understand what I'm saying. Expecting doom because you've always had it is not helpful for the planet. And when it comes from a light worker, it's not helpful for the light worker. Let's talk about what's happening. The energy of the planet. It was March of this year in Boston. And I ask you if you'd noticed something changing, a cycle of integrity, where the term no more fence sitting was starting to pay off. And that there would be those taken to task for inappropriate behavior. Back in March. Do you see where that's gone and how fast it's happened? There is a change at hand. This could not have happened a decade ago. Unthinkable 20 years ago. Not on anyone's charts in 1938. A time where you're finely tuned, expecting peace, working with the renegade countries that are still working in the dark. And you have the elegance to start cleaning up things that need cleaning up. 2008, a few years before the shift, one of the major cleanups started to happen with something that really needs cleaning. banking. Dear ones, as free as this country is, and as beautiful as your democracies, you have nothing to say about banking. It's completely and totally controlled, and it's controlled in the traditional manner. Many who control it don't even understand its inappropriateness. It came to a crashing halt in 2008. The system was allowing unthinkable things to happen to the American dream. People were going to lose their houses because they received inappropriate mortgages that those who gave them to them know absolutely they couldn't keep them. Think of that. You collect your money for selling somebody a home knowing full well it's going to be the heartbreak of their life. Think of that. Dear ones, that's about as inappropriate as it gets. And for the first time, banking was changed. You received a crash in the real estate market that is only just now coming back. That's the kind of effect even small things have on your life. So let's talk about that. It's time for phase 2. Wild cards are not always individuals. Sometimes they are organizations, perceptions, ways of doing things. I'll take you back a couple thousand years. There was a certain master who was very, very upset because what was going on in the temple was not right. It just wasn't right. In the temple, there were money changers. It's biblical. You saw it. It happened. It was a record of anger against things that should not be because they are totally inappropriate. Greed in the center of that which was sacred. But the word was used, money changers. In those days, dear ones, villages had their own currencies. There was not the uniformity that you would have today. Regions had their own currencies within lands that were controlled by one emperor. And the only way to buy and sell anything if you came into town is you had to have the right currency of the region. Money changing had to be done, and in that there was greed. Because it had to be done, because there was no option, the ones who could do it, who were wealthy, charged a lot. It was very sad to see sometimes 20-25% of that which you had given somebody go away simply so you can have some other money. Welcome to banking today. If the world is going to get together with the various currencies it has, dear ones, there's got to be a better way of changing them. If you had any idea the amount of money that is created through this one process, transferring large sums of money from one currency to another, is not going to last. There are other ways. And there may not be a crash. Instead, there may be different paradigms set up among countries to accomplish this that don't involve the banks. Can you imagine that? It's coming. So you see, here's a situation where innovation and technology goes way beyond the tradition of hundreds of years of a greedy process that nobody can control. Nobody can change the way banks do it. What will happen is banks won't be needed anymore. This is a paradigm shift. This is a wild card. Banking has other things that it must clean up. in order to be transparent and fair and return to that which it is supposed to do. Be a place that helps you. It doesn't steal from you. There's more. Oh, dear ones, for years we have been telling you about the inappropriateness of what we have called Big Pharma. There have been those who say, well, define Big Pharma. Loosely, it is those who keep you sick and dying for money. It does not represent everyone who makes that which is a chemically altered pill. But the ones who are sometimes the largest and have the most money involved will spend so much creating a drug that even marginally works that even if something better comes along, they won't touch it until their amortization schedules are met. Dear one, the cure for some of the major diseases on the planet are in the drawers of those companies. And they have purchased them and put them in the drawer and waited for the amortization schedule to finish on the drug that doesn't work. That's keeping people sick and dying for money. It's gonna be revealed. Look at what has started small and where it's going. Look at the papers today. Look at the inappropriate things that are starting to pop out because people are starting to report it. There are individuals who know exactly what I'm talking about right now, who will step forward and say there are some things you need to know. I've been part of some things that I'm ashamed of, but you need to know. And eventually this is going to bust wide open, and it may very well be company to company to company and not a whole industry. But dear ones, it is on the cusp. Look at the astrology for 2018. How it happens is free will. When it happens is free will. The courage of those to step forward. When will they step forward? Sooner than later. Look at what's happening now and the courage it's taken to step forward on some of the inappropriate things on this planet. And only now you're finding out about. Some of the things that are being revealed about the past that may even hurt your heart. More than 10 years ago, I said there's a time coming there can be no more fence sitting. Fence sitting is a metaphor. You know that. It's nothing to do with people sitting on the fence. It's a metaphor for those who say one thing and do another. You can't sit on that fence of integrity and pretend, because it will be seen. It will be reported. You got to decide which side you're on. Truly, it's not necessarily a choice between light and dark. It's a choice between what you've been told, the tradition that you grew up in, that which you believe, and that which is coming. Think of the bounds being lifted from anything you've ever been taught. God is bigger than you think. It's bigger than you were ever told. It surrounds everything here, everything you are. It's in you, around you. It is not an energy to be worshipped, dear ones. It's an energy of family to be enjoyed. That's different. That's different. Once you start to see that, the shackles will fall from that which you've been told about what must be done in order to have the mercy of God, the grace of God, all of these phrases that you've heard all your life. Why should you have to do anything when God is inside? That's family. Human nature has built a box around the Creator and made you afraid. The Creator is not an energy that's going to burn you or judge you. That's family. That's family. That's family. Can you break out of that bubble? The sooner you can, the quicker these things are going to happen. Now, why would that be? We've told you before, there's something new. The thing you call the field, the thing that wants to put things together, physics with an attitude, it's all here. It's all part of the new magnetic grid, the consciousness, all the things that are being studied today. A confluence of things you didn't expect to happen that would create that which you've asked for. What can you do? Crying, this is good. What can I do? What can I do? Expect benevolent future. That's what you can do. Forget what your mother and father told you or how they acted or any of the things that they said would happen. It's not a disservice to them. Dear ones, if they are not living anymore, they're in this room. And they're saying, go get them with compassion and benevolence. Don't pay any attention to the old energy because that's all we knew, dear. Son, daughter, that's all we knew when we told you these things. And it's changed, and it's changed, and it's changed. Medical doctor, if you're listening to this, and there are some who are, it's not a betrayal of those who taught you how to do medicine for you to break out of a box that they gave you. It's not a betrayal to discover what else is there so you can help more people. It's not a betrayal of those who you loved and you listened to in medical school, and to this day who you might adore in your own way for teaching you so well. It's not a betrayal to open the box and find the things that you didn't know and they didn't know that are coming. Now, what's coming? We told you you're going to see an amazing thing start to take place. There'll come a day when you will never need another drug. Ever. Why is it, dear ones, this country, in all of its wisdom, in all of its greatness, threw away homeopathy? Do you realize you are a minority American? That homeopathy has been known from this seed years and years ago, that you can give the body instructions and the body will do the rest. You threw it away, and what you got instead are the problems that you have now with Big Pharma. Where chemistry was the answer, it never has been the answer. But in the change that is coming, as outlined even today by the good doctor, is that there's going to be a shift where medicine starts to create and agree with the creation of tinctures. That is to say, they will get the point. You'll understand that the body is so smart and has parts that you never saw before, that they'll be triggering pieces and parts of the body to cure itself. Dear ones, I want to tell you something. We've told you before that your DNA is not working at a high percentage. When it gets to 44 and beyond, I will tell you something you won't believe. Right now, you're at about 35%. It's the reason those little cells that the doctor talked about are dormant in your body and not doing something about the fact that your telomeres are shortening every time you rejuvenate. That's not the plan. That's not the plan at all. When you start receiving a higher percentage of activity and efficiency in your DNA, the telomeres will not shorten. There is your lifespan increase. But there's something beautiful happening. Disease attaches itself to you so easy because you're not working at anywhere near the percentage that will chase it away. What you think is what you get. A hypochondriac will end up catching everything they're afraid of. What does that tell you with thought? What does that tell you that thoughts can produce? Listen to me. There'll come a day when no disease can attach itself to you because your immune system is working so much better. It's part of living longer when you don't have to fight the diseases, when you won't lose friends to the diseases that are rampant. There'll come a time when they will remember cancer like they remember the plague today. Gone from the planet. And it won't be because there was a medicine for it. It'll be because the human beings progressed so that they understood consciousness was the answer. And medicine could then focus on this. Surgical techniques without invasion to the body. Breaking up the plaque that causes Alzheimer's with sound without any intervention. Relief of some of the things that have no relief today, because then you are free to go forward without drugs. That is the energy that's coming. Brian, how long is this going to take? Yes. Oh, human being, this can happen fast or not. Brian, what's going to happen with North Korea? Yes. I've talked too much about the leader there. Many channels about his options and what he chose to do, being in the dark. He's smart. Again, he knows that he will lose absolutely everything if he's not careful. His whole purpose is to frighten and take the credit for it, and his people will know he has faced the giant. His purpose is not to die with all his people. Think about that. He's just crazy enough. Dear ones, you are in control. 2 steps forward, 1 step backward. Don't get excited with the step backward. Don't decide that nothing works or nothing that has been said is accurate when you see things that hurt your heart or didn't go the way you thought. 2 steps forward, 1 step backward. That is the way humanity has always progressed when it has progressed. There are things coming, dear ones. There are potentials for inventions, for new, complete industries that you never even heard of that will change everything you do. Ask someone in 1938 how their Wi-Fi is. And they'll say, what's that? And you'll say, well, that's an extension of wireless of the net. And they'll say, what's the net? And you'll say, well, that's what allows us to put the computers together. And they say, what's a computer? Do you understand? There are things coming that cannot be explained without the infrastructure that's coming before them. But when you get them, you might remember and pull out the archive of this channel and say he was right. This planet gradually is improving. This planet wants peace. Not like in 1938 where you had no choice. Think of these things and what you can do about it. And now, as a visitor from space, you can leave. And you can put your politics right back where you had them. Or not. Anger does not help anything. Maturity and compassion should replace all of it. Understanding and a look forward to things that might change, the things that you don't like. This channel is not meant to offend anyone, for I'm in love with all humanity. I speak from the experience of having seen it on other planets. And you're right on track. Right on track. Look at the astrology for 2018 if you want to see it again. And so it is.